Welcome to this reading of Censored. This reading is going to be from issue number 95, the title of which is This Land Was Yours. And before I begin, let me quote Proverbs 22:16. He that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want. Also 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Words to live by. And now, number 95 from Censored, This Land Was Yours, by William J. Eisenman, Ph.D. As a progressive and a critical thinker, you believe you can make points and win arguments. That is, convince people of the rightness of your position with facts and logic. You're wrong. You also believe that if right-wing conservative Christians can be shown the error of their ways, they will change. Again, you're wrong. People holding ideas that can find no basis in reality, those who claim to be guided by an unprovable faith, are unteachable. God calls them incorrigible, and the lake of fire, eternal death, is their destiny, not hell or heaven. Right-wing conservative counterfeit Christians have again managed to get the United States Justice Department to move against pornography. The FBI is looking for recruits for the Bush administration's war on porn. These new recruits will be an anti-obscenity squad. This war on porn is a top priority of the torture-loving, non-truth-telling Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. This new squad will divert 8 agents, a supervisor, and assorted support staff to collect evidence against manufacturers and purveyors of pornography. Not child porn, but the normal kind that is sold to consenting adults. The wars on terror and drugs haven't been won yet, and now another war begins. This going after pornographers is a political bone being thrown to the religious right. It, like Edwin Meese's Third's war on porn under Ronald Reagan, will waste time, money, energy, and resources. It is an example of a pathological quest by pathological minds. It is a Taliban-like terrorist attack on free-thinking Americans. Much like the NSA's domestic spying, which also is aimed at innocent Americans, the FBI's war on porn will also target the innocent. Right-wing counterfeit Christians believe that adult pornography is a threat to families and children, which is not true. But even if it were, what allows religious nuts to make law for those who don't believe in their religious delusions? Pornography, abortion on demand, and homosexuality are not mentioned in the 10 Commandments. Sabbath breaking, something 99% of Christians do, is. Also idolatry, adultery, and lying, things that 99% of Republican conservative counterfeit Christians are guilty of, are mentioned. And breaking one of God's laws is breaking them all. It is then fair to ask, why would conservative right-wing counterfeit Christians attack those with a sliver in their eye when they, the counterfeit Christians, have a beam in their eye? Why do these obscene counterfeit Christian soldiers seek to force their law on others? And why don't they themselves obey their own laws? What pathology drives these zealots to attack Americans and this country's Constitution and its First Amendment that protects pornography as free speech? No religious or irreligious cult has the right to deny Americans their right to manufacture pornography. The United States Supreme Court has incorrectly declared that obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment. But pornography is not obscenity, and in fact, both are protected speech under the First Amendment. Behind this new war on porn is religious thinking that wishes to inscribe more repressive laws in our law books. One such law would have intelligent design taught in science classes in our schools. Intelligent design is not science. It is creationism, a movement that states that Darwin's theory of evolution can't explain how life originated or how complex life forms came to be. They claim an undefined intelligent or intelligence must be involved. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that creationism is religion and can't be taught in the public schools. But both G.W. Bush and Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist endorsed the teaching of intelligent design in America's classroom. Science won't destroy faith unless that faith is narrow and not open to new knowledge. Right-wing conservative Christians believe that God created the earth and the entire universe in 6 literal 24-hour days. The Bible doesn't reveal how long ago the universe or the earth were created. But it does reveal that 1/3 of God's angels were the first inhabitants of the earth. The angels sinned and polluted and destroyed the earth, which was put in darkness and covered with water. You'll find that in 2 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4, Jude 6, and Genesis 1, verse 2. The creation process spoken about in Genesis 1, verse 2, is not the original creation of the earth. Check that out with Psalms 104, verse 30. It speaks of a renewing of the face of the earth. The Bible states that the earth and the universe were created at the same time, and that could indeed have been 13 or 15 billion years ago. But it is clear that the earth was not created 6,000 years ago. Again, why should we allow religious nuts the right to make law for us when they don't even know what they're talking about? This is but one more example of incompetence, the same incompetence that plagues the White House. Still, the religious dupes that swarmed out to vote for George W. Bush aren't convinced that he is not a man of God. These religious dupes that voted for George W. Bush saw only that he would prevent the gays from marrying and get some judges to overturn Roe versus Wade and to stop porn. What they got was a culture of corruption and cronyism that kills the innocent. They installed evil instead of godliness. They got a soulless capitalist in place of a statesman. They got an illegitimate president who acts like a despot and has no clue what the general welfare is. The religious do-gooders who want to shut down porn, deny women the right to abortion, and ostracize gays won't let God do his job. God will judge all in his time. Hebrews 13, verse 4. These sanctimonious do-gooders want to be both judge and jury. They seek to punish now. Political pundits advise that Democrats, in order to win elections, should be like Republicans and wear their Christianity on their sleeve, talk faith, and stage photo ops with evangelicals. This is an example of how shallow politics is. Wouldn't it be better to unmask the religious charlatan, Republicans, put them in their place, shame them, and drive them or keep them from power? This would be an honest way to conduct a campaign. But with all politics being pathological, this is too much to hope for. How can one make the devil's world a better place? One can't. Only people can be made better. Your country is like your corporation. Your vote is your share in your country. You also have a share in the wealth of your country. The oil in the ground of your country does not belong to ExxonMobil, and if they want to extract it, they must pay a royalty. You own a piece of the commons. As a citizen, you have a right, according to the Declaration of Independence, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In our modern world, we can take that to mean the right to a way to make a living, a right to food, clothing, and shelter. And no one's rights are superior to those of anyone else. In today's world, do you have the same rights as the rich and the well-connected? Our rights are not given to us as a gift of government. We are born with our rights. They are natural. Governments are instituted to secure our rights, our natural rights. Government is a collective entity, as is civilization. Our government is instituted by the consent of the governed, that is, we the people. Under our Constitution, all power comes from we the people. We are the sovereigns, not the President, Congress, or the Supreme Court. We, the people, have only granted limited legislative powers to our government, according to the 9th and 10th Amendments to our Constitution. The powers under our Constitution are divided between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. These powers are restrained by checks and balances. The people's vote is a final check on overweening power, which is why it is so important that voting procedures be honest. Any vote tampering or disenfranchisement must be punished immediately and severely. Our Constitution was meant to serve the 18th century and generations to come. But this is contrary to what Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia believes. Our Constitution is not self-enforcing. It must be upheld and protected by progressive, critical, and original thinkers, and not be held hostage by ideologues who believe and guide their lives by traditional mythical delusions. This can only stifle progress, leave the mind stagnant and ignorant. If the Constitution weren't a living, breathing document, why would it be amendable? The Constitution is not just, quote, a goddamned piece of paper, unquote. And it requires protection. When our government no longer secures for us the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we have a right, it says in the Declaration of Independence, to abolish it. That is, to throw the bums out now, and not just on voting day. It is not that our government doesn't work. It's that those who are in control have sabotaged our government. Nowhere in the Constitution is the president given the power to declare war. That is the job of Congress. Congress can't give its powers to the president. Our president cannot be a king. The president can't claim he has powers that he doesn't have. That is despotism. During the Great Depression, which lasted 12 years, 25% of Americans were unemployed. The Great Depression, like the lack of response to Hurricane Katrina, was just another Republican disaster. During the 1920s, business produced too many consumer goods, supply-side economics, and demand never kept up with supply. There was too much productivity among workers, but wages never kept up. Take-home pay rose only by 8%. Business, in the meantime, was taking in huge profits, and this maldistribution of wealth was the chief cause of the Great Depression. Workers were underpaid and could only afford to purchase the goods that they produced by buying on credit. This system created wealth for those who were already wealthy. Does this all sound familiar? In 1920, the top 1%'s income rose by 75%, while the mythical little guy's income increased by 9%. When President Warren G. Harding died, Calvin Coolidge became president and claimed that the business of America is business. American exports in 1920 rose to only $8 billion. Three groups of people were raking in huge profits at this time: Wall Street investors, land speculators, and bootleggers. In 1924, Andrew Mellon was head of the Treasury Department, and he said that taxation should not be used as a field for socialistic experiment or as a club to punish success. This is the attitude of the Bush administration. It, like the Reagan administration before it, has sought to punish the mythical little guy and socialistically siphon treasury money to corporations and the rich. Ronald Reagan said, "The taxing power must not be used to regulate the economy or bring about social change." But that's exactly what he did with his obscene tax cuts for corporations and the rich. Andrew Mellon managed to get tax cuts for the rich by 2/3. The highest income rate in 1925 was 25%. Never have tax cuts for the rich been a shot in the arm for the economy. Tax cuts for the rich have always served other purposes: that they help The economy has always been a lie. The unhealthy maldistribution of wealth continued under President Calvin Coolidge in the United States and between the United States and Europe. In the late 1920s, 75% of Americans earned $2,500 or less yearly. The top 25% of earners raked in more than 55% of the national income. President Coolidge, like Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, signed pro-business legislation and vetoed legislation that would help farmers and the mythical little guy. In Coolidge's day, 25% of the working population were employed in agriculture. In 1929, the top 200 corporations held 49% of all corporate wealth, with $81 billion in assets as a result of mergers and business consolidations. The economy collapsed during the Great Depression because business turned out too much product that couldn't be sold to people who were in debt in a country whose economy was based on a maldistribution of wealth. This is basic economics. If the consuming portion of an economy has little or no money to consume, then supplies will rot in warehouses. Tax cuts for the rich can't help spur the economy in this instance. Tax cuts for the rich only make the maldistribution of wealth worse. Since the Bush administration claims to be Christian and reads the Bible daily, how is it they don't obey these scriptures that say it's a sin to give to the rich? The Bible states that the rich have their consolation and that they don't need our help. In this one instance alone, it is certain that there are no Christians in the White House. Those who thought that George W. Bush was a Christian are dupes and fools who have never read the Bible. Christians who voted for George W. Bush are deceived. Jesus didn't get angry at the whores, pornographers, and homosexuals of his day. He kicked the businessmen and the usurers out of the temple. They were practicing the devil's economics. During the Great Depression, localities, charities, faith-based initiatives failed miserably to provide real relief to the unemployed and those in need. It's the same today. Yet the Bush administration is giving away taxpayer money to counterfeit Christian faith-based initiatives. This is cruel, and this is wrong. The poor need more than free turkeys at Christmas and Thanksgiving. Several times in our history, with the right people at the helm, the United States could have eliminated poverty within its borders. But it did not. And it was a deliberate choice. Franklin D. Roosevelt said that every American has a right to life and a right to make a living. FDR felt that the duty of government was the maintenance of a balance within which every individual may find safety, if he wishes it, in which every individual may attain such power as his ability permits. There were 13 to 15 million people unemployed in America in 1933. Bread lines and soup kitchens were common sights in cities, and farms went bankrupt. People who had it withdrew their money from banks, and at the end of the year, 33 million Americans had no regular source of income. Conservatives will tell you all they had to do was pull themselves up by the bootstraps, and that their predicament was their own fault. During his first administration, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared that the forces of selfishness and lust for power met their match. We need an FDR today. In 1936, FDR won the presidency, and the Democrats took the House and Senate, one-party rule. But they governed rightly, while George W. Bush and his minions have corrupted our government, turned it into a monster on the world scene. They rule instead of govern. They are bullies and not statesmen. In 1937, one-third of our nation was ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. 37 million or more in America today are in the same situation. FDR understood that the steady flow of wages to millions of workers is essential if the products of our industry and of our industry of our farmers are to be consumed. The unemployment rate in 1937 was 22%. 11 million Americans could not find jobs. Millions sought change. Seething in the minds and hearts of many Americans were the seeds of revolution. Many now understood the words of Langdon Post, who admonished that nothing was ever gotten in this country except when the people forced it. Even at this time, Louisiana was at the bottom of the economic ladder. Huey Long noted that 65% of the entire wealth of the United States was owned by 2% of the people. He called for economic reform known as share the wealth. Long wanted the rich to give $5,000 to each deserving family. He guaranteed every family an annual income of $2,000 to $3,000 and a 30-hour work week. 1 month vacation each year. Old age pensions. Free college for deserving students. And government purchase of farm surplus. Share the Wealth Club soon had 4.6 million members. It wasn't long before Huey Long was assassinated. FDR's New Deal ended with Republican gains in the House and Senate in 1938. Did the mythical little guy vote against his own interests this year, too? By the end of 1938, there were 800 fascist groups in America. There were brown shirts in Germany, black shirts in Italy, silver shirts in America. The Protestant militia of America, led by William Dudley Pelley, had 100,000 members. Father Coughlin's Christian Front had 200,000 members, and they attacked Jews and foreigners. Today, we have fascists in the White House, traitors, and corporate ass kissers. At this time, a factory worker earned $16.89 a week, and a bag of roasted peanuts cost 1 cent. In 1936, a Ford, Chevrolet, or Plymouth could be had for $750. The unemployment rate in 1940 was 14.6%, about 8.1 million people. 2 out of 3 Americans at this time believed that there was too much power in the hands of a few rich men and corporations. By mid-1941, the beginning of World War II, 2 million jobs were created, and with these paychecks came a buying spree which spurred the economy. In America in 1965, manufacturing accounted for 53% of the economy, while in 1988 it dropped to 39%. And in 2004, it was 9%. This inability to manufacture is a national security issue, a vulnerability, especially for a superpower. Since 1998, America lost 3 million manufacturing jobs, all as a result of globalization, which means increased mobility of goods, services, labor, technology, and capital throughout the world. The outsourcing that occurs as a result of globalization makes America poorer, while America's technology and wealth moves to other countries. All manufacturing wealth that was once America's now goes to foreigners. This weakening of America is prophesied in the Bible. Outsourcing may give us cheaper goods from abroad, but it depresses wages here at home. If America can't manufacture and sell goods, then money goes bye-bye. Companies are participating in their own long-term destruction by reducing the incomes of Americans who are their primary customers. This all occurs because corporate America is deferred to by both the Democrats and Republicans, who artificially stimulate the growth of these behemoths whose aim is to dominate the world. If giant corporations were countries seeking to take over the world, we would go to war with them. Business fortunes exist primarily in an international power structure that serves not a country or a people, but the entities themselves. Stephen Moore reminds us that corporate welfare in the tax code and federal budget costs more than $100 billion a year. The end. Welcome to this reading of Censored. We'll be reading from Censored number 96. This Land Was Yours, Part 2, by William J. Eisenman. And before I begin reading, I'd like to quote Proverbs 22:16. He that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want. Also of interest would be 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 21. Prove all things and hold fast that which is good. He who guides his life by unprovable ideas can hurt you. Guided by what is in his head instead of what is in reality. He can't be swayed by truth or emotions. He can only mouth platitudes in place of real feelings or thoughts based on real feelings. His disconnect from life will harm you if he attains a power position over you. This is what our pathological politics has given us in regard to the religio-fascistic ideologues who have seized power in our government. Mining companies pay we the people no royalties when they take our metals from government land. The tax rate on oil companies in 1998 was 5.6%, and it has finally become public knowledge that our tax system levies the poor, the middle class, and even the upper middle class to subsidize the rich. This perverted scheme of the reduction of tax rates for the rich busted loose in 1981 with Ronald Reagan. Today, the richest 1% are taxed more lightly than the middle class. The poor are taxed more than the top 1% of taxpayers. Social Security funds paid for the tax cuts for the super rich in 1981. Now our tax system is being used to create fewer stable jobs and less secure retirement income. The United States had no budget deficits from 1998 through 2001 under Bill Clinton. In Revelation 18, the beast, the last revival of the Holy Roman Empire, is referred to as Babylon the Great, and there is a description of the beast. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. These merchants of the earth are globalist corporate moguls who operate huge commercial conglomerates, who view the whole earth as their marketplace. These global corporate masters are driven by greed, the bottom line, and they wish to do away with all taxation in order to fashion corporate empires. These business moguls seek personal gain above all else, and to hell with the people and all governments. These free trade moguls will align themselves with the beast in the end time and chuckle with glee at the destruction and enslavement of the United States and its people. Revelation 18, verses 12 through 13, shows that the beast will deal in the souls of men, that is, slave labor. It will have a slave market. In the last 30 years, incomes at the top of the income ladder have grown obscenely. The poorest 20% of taxpayers saw their income drop from $10,000 in 1977 to $8,800 in 1999. From 1970 to 2000, the average income of the top 10% skyrocketed to 88.6%, while the share of the bottom 90% of taxpayers plummeted from two-thirds to 50%. Money just magically flowed upward. 50% of the income of the super rich is as a result of capital gains. Money, making money, not from labor. Lowering the capital gains tax just pours more money into their hands. The capital gains tax in 1987 was 28%, and in 1998 it was 20%. The rich, of course, don't want to pay any taxes at all. Today, the overall tax burden has been shifted from capital to labor. In 2002, corporate revenues were 10%, while in Eisenhower's day they were 33%. The growth of mega corporations has been artificially fueled by subsidies and gifts from the people's treasury. For a long time, the rich have had a secretive campaign to shift the burden of taxes off themselves and onto everyone else. People earning $50,000 to $500,000 are being screwed and subsidizing huge tax cuts for the rich. 75% of Americans earn less than $60,000 a year. In 2003, $150,000 was equivalent to $30,000 in 1966. Our money today is nearly worthless. There is no true accounting of inflation today. Since the Reagan years, housing is no longer figured in the Consumer Price Index. The Social Security tax paid by the employer is actually paid by the employee. When we cut taxes for any group, we help them to prosper. Corporations have been helped to become monsters. The question that assails any critical thinker is, haven't the rich prospered enough? The Bible says that the rich already have their consolation. Another perverted action by our government is that those earning less than $25,000 are more likely to be audited by the Internal Revenue Service. The working poor are easy targets. In 2002, the IRS was auditing 5 times more working poor to every rich person. Each time Congress writes and passes tax bills, it makes mistakes. Republicans believe audits are bad. In the 1993-1994 Enron case, where the company was accused of making false reports to shareholders, the IRS backed down, as did the Securities and Exchange Commission. It is common knowledge that the IRS lets known tax cheats off the hook without paying. Tax evaders cheat the United States out of $300 billion each year. America is cheated out of $70 billion yearly to offshore tax fraud. When the rich corporations and business don't pay their fair share of taxes, they don't share in the maintaining of the modern civilization that gave rise to their success. In 2002, there were 82,100 offshore tax evaders. Our system has become a socialist redistribution scheme that gives to the rich. Hey, Tea Party members, did you get that? The Bible condemns this, and yet those in power in government and their political base call themselves Christian, claiming to derive their God from the Bible. These ungodly processes undermine the growth and stability of the United States. This favoritism for the rich is bipartisan, and misinformation about taxes helps the rich. 2. It is also not fair that churches are exempt from paying taxes. Some pagan churches have grown fat because of such breaks, while their parishioners remain poor. The Reagan administration gave billions of dollars to Saddam's regime in Iraq, but not a penny went to mythical welfare queens. Tough-talking Reagan promised America will never make concessions to terrorists, yet he was preparing secretly to give weapons to Iran in exchange for hostages. United States money and support fueled the present-day worldwide Islamist army. These are the people who we are at war with today, and those that the United States gave visas to during the 1980s. Al-Qaeda came out of the Afghan resistance against the Soviets. All of this was nurtured by those calling themselves Christians. Our illegitimate president, George W. Bush, is said to be a born-again Christian. He accepted Jesus Christ as his personal savior in 1985. And Bush states that he prays and reads the Bible daily. Bush says he is a Christian, but he doesn't act like a biblical Christian. During Bill Clinton's presidency, 22 million jobs were created, while during George W. Bush's tax-cutting and corporate-loving regime, not one net job has been created. The GDP growth is a sham, and the true unemployment figure should be around 10%. George W. Bush also says he talks to God and that cows talk to him. The cows probably call him a moofucker. G.W. Bush is not a conservative. He is not a neoconservative either. Bush is no kind of conservative. He used his conservative base to achieve power. G.W. Bush is a right-winger whose God is the almighty dollar and whose concept of a unitary president is pure fascism. This regime knows nothing of justice, and Adam Smith said that without justice, the immense fabric of human society must in a moment crumble. Smith also said, what improves the circumstances of the greater part, that is, the lower classes, can never be regarded as an inconveniency to the whole. No society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. Where wages are high, accordingly, we shall always find the workman more active, diligent, and expeditious. Before the fall of the Roman Empire, there was heavy usury in the provinces. In fact, Brutus lent money in Cyprus at 48% interest. Sounds like our present-day credit card companies. And in keeping with that, have you looked at your credit card interest rates lately? Adam Smith also warned that high profits raise the price of work more than wages. He also thought that the necessities of life should be regulated when there's a monopoly, and that overtrading causes a scarcity of money. Monopolies hurt the general interest of the country. This also occurs when the judicial, executive, and congressional powers are united. Justice is then sacrificed to politics. For decades, right-wingers have assailed Americans with a disinformation campaign that has associated the word liberal with spendthrift, immorality, political correctness, unpatriotism, and elitism. Liberals were demonized. All this in the face of historical fact that liberals for 70 years have been the most competent, fiscally trustworthy stewards of the economy. The fact is, G.W. Bush and his ilk are elitists, and all of the right-wing Republican populism is a sham. The Republican political agenda is to cut taxes and gut government. Their objective is to destroy government. They don't believe in government. They worship corporations. Thomas Paine called for income security, child welfare, public education. Right-wingers call this socialism. They call community socialism or communism. These people associate socialism with Stalin's Russia and Nazi Germany. In their minds, socialism is the same as authoritarianism and dictatorship. But socialism is a political philosophy that advocates that the community should own and control industry, capital, and land. That is, the community is your government, which you own a share in. Would you rather trust your Social Security, your pension, your job, and your life to some bottom line, fickle corporation, some industry that may not be here tomorrow, or to your government, your community that you own a share in? The United States economy has been nuked in the last 5 years with their budget-busting tax cuts for the rich. The counterfeit Christian Bush administration has produced 1 million jobs in the private sector and 1 million jobs in the public sector. Each month, the economy needs to produce 150,000 jobs to keep up with population growth. By this time, 9 million jobs should have been created. Tax cuts for the rich is the wrong policy to be applied to a consumer-driven economy such as ours. Under George W. Bush, 2 years of Clinton surpluses were squandered. Bush rang up a debt in 5 years, more debt, in 5 years than all the presidents before him. This is serious stuff, and certainly more important than whether gays should be allowed to marry. These Republicans in office take from the rich, give to the rich, and brag that they are Christians. There is no historical evidence that Republicans know how to manage America's economy, yet this myth that they do persists. By any measurement of national progress, Democratic presidents have a superior record, more growth, higher wages, lower deficits, lower government spending, lower inflation than Republican regimes. An economy works best when business is well regulated and workers are well compensated. President Bill Clinton increased the top tax rate in 1993 and began 115 months of economic expansion, the longest in history. Under Clinton, the unemployment rate dropped to 4%, and over 22 million jobs were created in his 8-year presidency. These are facts. People are entitled to their opinions, but they are not entitled to their facts. Right-wingers have made of capitalism, as it is now constituted, a religion, the devil's economics. The late counterfeit Christian Jerry Falwell, during the 1960s, opposed civil rights. He and his cohort, Pat Robertson, believe they have a mandate from their God to Christianize America and to draw all of us into their pathological, mythical world that longs for a theocratic America. There are 60% more divorces in Republican Montana than in Democratic New Jersey. Marital problems and breakups are much more common in the Bible Belt than in the more secular Northeast. Yet poor, duped Americans continue to give hundreds of millions of dollars yearly to these religious frauds that advise the Bush administration. These right-wing dupes siphon money upward and tear away our social safety net. They are out to impose a fraudulent and out-of-date moral code on others who don't believe as they do. In their politics, these people are like terrible infants. They are selfish, self-centered, they hate civil rights, and reject social constraints. These counterfeit Christians that are seeking to outlaw privacy rights for us all would institute the death penalty for abortion, atheism, adultery, blasphemy, pornography, and homosexuality. They would, as they have done in the past, crush other religions and do away with the Constitution. These people seek a marriage of church and state and corporations, fornication with the kings of the earth, as mentioned in the Bible. They believe that the wealthy are blessed by their God. George W. Bush has prayer meetings in the White House. He hardly misses a chance to bow his head and pray. In Puritan, Massachusetts, all meetings began with a prayer. The witch killers believed that their God was the only God, and what they understood as truth was the only truth. It was their way or the highway. No other creeds were accepted, and those who didn't agree were punished, banished, or hanged. The goals of the Puritan witch killers was to gain grace and make a lot of money. To the Puritans and to the counterfeit Christians of our day, moral transgressions and criminal offenses were the same. Welfare did not exist among the Puritans. Cotton Mather said the idle poor should starve. He did give to the worthy poor. John Winthrop believed poverty was a sign of character weakness. He would have thought that those in the breadlines during the Great Depression were immoral and damned. The witch killers thought it was heresy to do good unto others. The Puritans were irrational ideologues, much like the right-wing counterfeit Christians of our day. Many in America have difficulty associating pathology with the rich and powerful. Much of the time, underlings are blamed for screw-ups or craziness. Only in hindsight do many agree that, yes, Hitler was absolutely nuts. The social savagery in America today stems from self-seeking, without concern for social justice, parading as righteousness. The Bush administration worships selfishness as a virtue, and this is crazy. In America, there are 2,022 people with huge incomes who don't, because of loopholes, pay any taxes at all. As of 2002, there were more than 1.7 million more people in poverty, 34.6 million. The average CEO in America makes 411 times what a blue-collar worker earns, and all he or she does is shuffle papers across a big desk. The bigger the better. George W. Bush believes only God knows who is going to heaven. 76% of Americans believe in heaven, think they are going there. Also, 76% of Americans believe in hell. Most of these believers call themselves Christians and believe these ideas about heaven and hell come from the Bible. In fact, these ideas come from ancient Egypt. They are pagan ideas that are carried on by religious tradition. The counterfeit Christians in the White House, those in charge of foreign policy and the nuclear trigger, believe these myths, and they supposedly conduct their lives, and now our lives, in line with these myths. Is it any wonder that our country is in big trouble? The neoconservatives and other losers in our government believe America would be safer in a world that was free and democratic and where aggression is swiftly punished. Of course, the United States would dominate. Neoconservatives were once liberals who rebelled against the hippie rebellions of the 1960s. They now consider themselves to be super patriots and warriors. Many had been Democrats who fell in love with Ronald Reagan and became Republicans. Neoconservatives stress the use of force wherever needed. Like counterfeit Christians, these neoconservatives are ideologues who believe that the ends justify the means. They believe the United Nations to be irrelevant. These ideologues are in reality cowards. They praise democracy and freedom as a way to avoid tyrants, but they actually promote tyranny. Like the Puritan Cotton Mather, they believe the truth to be an elastic commodity. Neoconservatives, as well as the Bush administration, lack empathy, just like Cotton Mather, who described a hypocrite as a person who was zealous against an innocent fashion, such as porn, taken up and used by the best of men while being guilty of great immoralities. This is an apt description of the Bush crime family, who all pray. The witch trials in New England were masterminded by unchecked ideologues. Ideologues abandon legal and ethical standards when they are in charge. It was ideologues who lied to Congress and the country and decided to invade and occupy Iraq and have goofed up everything. No black deed gets rewarded, and killed over 2,500 of this country's brave soldiers. What is the noble cause? The ideologue witch killers of the 1600s, although they repented, never paid for their crimes. Is this what we want to happen with the Bush criminals? The end. Welcome to Censored. This reading is going to be from number 97, issue 97, and it's called This Land Was Yours, Part 3, by William J. Eisenman, Ph.D. And before I begin reading, I'd like to quote the Proverbs 22, verse 16. He that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want. Also 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Progressives and critical thinkers still don't get it. The mind of the religio-political counterfeit Christian can't be changed. These people are incorrigible, and they are married to their pathology. It is in their character. Their ideology has been invested with so much ego that they can't ever, without true repentance, be taught. Their minds are closed. If we wish peace and that the truth prevail, these people must be defeated. In biblical terms, they must be brought to their knees with contrition and a broken heart. They must, in crisis, repent. This is their only salvation, and this is our only safety. These people, as we now see, are not politically benign. They are trying to destroy your country, and they are trying to destroy you. They are dangerous. With all the problems in Iraq and with Hurricane Katrina, what does the counterfeit Christian dominated Bush administration see as the new battleground? Pornography. Of course. About 50% of men in Christian churches struggle with porn. Is this a problem with the church? Most people choose of their own free will to view porn. Nobody twists their arms and they believe they have a right to do this. Gloria Steinem pontificates that the message of porn is one of violence, dominance, and conquest. In 2005, the counterfeit Christian Bush administration proposed $258 million for abstinence-only sex education programs that don't work, a waste of tax money. Many people with sexual problems don't like porn. They believe that the torture scenes at Abu Ghraib were inspired by images and acts that appear almost every day in American porn. Many people equate porn that denigrates women, that would be all porn to some, with Nazi art and little black Sambo books. Many times the porn industry is thought of like the tobacco industry, that for decades lied about the connection between cigarettes and cancer. These people would like to see the porn industry outlawed or at least regulated. But what about religion? More people have died as a result of the excesses of religion than have ever been harmed by porn. Religion is at the root of G.W. Bush's war on terror. Right-wing counterfeit Christians want the United States to obey biblical law. They want biblical law to replace the United States Constitution. They want you to obey their religious laws. They want to foist their beliefs on those who don't share their beliefs. These people have targeted the American judicial system, which they seek to control. Their infiltration system has worked very well. These people want business unregulated. They are seeking to institute a modern-day Articles of Confederation system, giving more power to the states. These people don't believe that the Bill of Rights applies to the states, only to the federal government. All of these counterfeit Christian right-wing strategies are hidden under a veneer of values, morality, and religion. These religious nuts have no respect for the United States Constitution or the way our government is organized. They despise checks and balances. The people who don't believe you have a right to porn or a right to privacy are extreme reactionaries. They long for an outmoded political and social order, or policy. They have an extreme agenda which wants to destroy our hard fought for freedoms. They want right wing activist judges to guide their lives. They want to outlaw abortion, the right to die, and pornography. They want a theocracy. Supposedly, the courts exist to preserve the rights of individuals, even when that is not the will of the majority. Yet right-wing activist Justice Antonin Scalia believes that the encouragement of religion was the best way to foster morality. It is clear that Antonin Scalia knows as much about religion as he does about the natural rights of humans. Religious reactionaries like Scalia and the counterfeit Christians who influenced the White House will see their agenda served by squashing the United States Constitution. In our world, justice depends on the man or the woman sitting on the bench. Some in the Reagan administration wanted the judicial system in their pocket, and they brought forth a plan called the Constitution in the year 2000. Choices ahead in constitutional interpretation. These people, wishing to undermine the United States Constitution, were religious reactionaries, and they believed that the separation of church and state is a fiction. Today, 10 out of 13 appeals courts are controlled by Republican appointees. Rules are different in different United States appellate circuits. Ronald Reagan tried to use federal judges to get into place the right-wing agenda. The counterfeit Christians in the Reagan years and today want right-wing ideologues on the federal courts. It's in place, folks. The infiltration is near complete. This has happened before in history with the Roman Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Empire. And it happened in this country with the witch killers. It's time to get your heads out of the sand, people, and do something about it. You can't keep taking your freedoms for granted. The counterfeit Christian Pat Robertson admits that there's a battle that amounts to a war of worldviews. These people don't want an independent judiciary in their worldview. These people despise everything that came out of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, including Social Security. Their machinations behind the scenes with the pharmaceutical industry sabotaged Medicare Part D, robbing from taxpayers to fund big drug companies and allowing them to screw you. The underlying idea in all this chicanery is, as exemplified by the U.S. Labor Department trying to screw workers out of overtime pay, to withdraw judicial support from the entire modern welfare state. The counterfeit Christian D. James Kennedy wants to reclaim America for Christ, no matter what the cost. These people mean to exercise godly dominion and influence over every aspect and institution of human society. Be afraid, reader. Those words are dangerous. These people are dangerous. Osama bin Laden and these counterfeit Christians are of one mind. G. W. Bush believes God wanted him to be president. If that's so, then God is a cheater. Bush was selected president in 2000, and massive voter fraud in 2004 gave him the election in Ohio. Bush won nothing. The God of the Bible doesn't cheat. but the God of this world does, Satan. The people who voted for G.W. Bush, if they believe themselves to be Christians, are deceived. Thomas Jefferson said, "If a belief can't bear the scrutiny of rationality, it can't be accepted as truth." The late counterfeit Christian Jerry Falwell would have liked to see the public schools taken over and run by counterfeit Christians. About 79.8% of Americans call themselves Christians, and 15% of Americans have no religion, while 9% say they are atheists or agnostics. Yet all these people calling themselves Christians don't act like biblical Christians. Again, we see that one argues with fanatics in vain. The God of the Bible destroyed those living at the time of the flood because they were too perverted to be reasoned with. This same reasoning holds true regarding Satan and 1/3 of the angels. All these minds were warped, and all were and are incorrigible. They can't return to their former state. There is no hope for Satan and those demons who obey him. Excuse me. There is a judgment for those who died in the flood. The religious right has an agenda, and they plot to take away your freedom and your country. They don't want to allow you to make your own moral choices. The counterfeit Christians and the unholy marriage of state and corporations and the military are all robbing this country's treasure. These all have conspired through economic sabotage to keep you poor and dependent, as well as insecure. Their plan is to have you work for slave wages and be thankful that you do. George W. Bush stacked the Department of Health and Human Services with those who say that condoms don't work and that women who suffer from premenstrual syndrome should pray. Pray to whom? Their false god? From 1992 to 2002, 50 convicts on death row were found to be innocent. If these 50 had been in Texas when George W. Bush was governor, they would have died. Bush would have allowed them to be killed. These people protect embryos that breathe like a fish rather than full-grown humans and children who are outside the womb. The religious right wants to define for you what is moral. The Free Congress Foundation arrogantly states that our movement will be entirely destructive. We will not try to reform the existing institutions. We only intend to weaken them and eventually destroy them. D. James Kennedy wants to reclaim America for Christ, whatever the cost. You can bet that these traitors are not being spied on by G.W. Bush's NSA. These destructive forces are at work at the United States Supreme Court, where right-wing judges come up with a decision they like and then fix the logic to support it. They rewrite history and precedent to support judicial activism. These decisions usually favor big corporations over the little guy. Both Justice Antonin Scalia and his sycophant Clarence Thomas believe money is equivalent to free speech. But the framers of the Constitution thought campaigning was wrong. Right-wing judges have a perverted interpretation of the doctrine of states' rights. These judges have denied disability and civil rights to Americans while mocking the Americans with Disabilities Act. Other minorities have also suffered because they lack the political power to help themselves. States are not sovereigns, yet the United States Supreme Court is protecting states from being sued by individuals. In America, sovereignty is invested in we, the people. Right-wing counterfeit Christians and their political whores in Washington, D.C. will say and do anything to further their pathological agenda. Tim Quagleen is the mediator between the White House and the counterfeit Christians, and his job is to keep them happy. We have abdicated our freedom, literally our democracy, to the rule makers. Our institutions now serve these masters. Right-wingers fear the truly educated mind. They love a mind filled with rote nonsense. They despise the critical thinker. The truly educated mind is an independent mind. It is the free mind that asks questions, wants to know, is not satisfied with the status quo. Law-abiding taxpayers pay $3,000 in annual taxes to cover the amount the big guys are evading. This Congress and the White House have auctioned off the tax code to the highest bidders at the expense of ordinary individuals and families. There are no accidents here. This is all calculated elitism. The IRS has been ordered, to go after the little guy. The Pentagon loses money and can't audit itself. It can't account for over $2.3 trillion. The Pentagon is the largest source of waste, fraud, and abuse, according to Robert Borosage. Yet to save money, we must cut children off Medicaid, deny welfare to the needy, and attack the disabled. Our priorities are certainly perverted. It would seem that the United States has solved the economic problem. America has escaped hunger, scarcity, the burdens of producing enough for human survival and general standard of well-being that is not restricted to the powerful few, the king and the high priest. Yet, many of us still have poverty to contend with. It would seem that for most of us, the dominant forces in our lives are not basic needs. Still, our servant representatives in government have blocked our real attempts to change our economic system in ways that would improve it and the lives of our fellow citizens. This has caused much social, political, and individual damage. American capitalism lacks a soul. Efficiency trumps community. This form of capitalism is contrary to the spirit of Christian service. Milton Friedman said that it is irresponsibility that makes capitalism succeed. This success is a matter of corporations not giving a damn about their employees, about communities, or our national identity. They also don't give a damn about patriotism. Corporations also push their costs on others. They are free from all responsibilities, and yet the law considers them persons. Americans are not really free. Employees have no rights when they work for someone. A master slave relationship is formed, much as in feudalism. The employer makes all the rules. Workplaces are factories of authoritarianism polluting our democracy, said Elaine Bernard. Employers have no loyalty, yet demand it from their employees. People really must own their own work. Democracy can't be reconciled with the type of capitalism that is practiced in America. Both have opposing principles and ends. People are not things. Work has become, in many instances, dehumanizing, and the laborer doesn't share in the wealth his labor creates. And this explains the redundancy of concentrated wealth that persists in American society. The rich get richer. America's worker system is the main engine generating American inequality. CEOs make over 500 times more than the average worker merely for shuffling paper on a huge desk. The average CEO only lasts 3 years or less at a job. Downsizing causes stock prices to rise and increases tax write offs, but it destroys production, jobs, and careers. Joe Cobrel said nobody ever got rich on a paycheck. The American corporate culture is at war with values of family and personal fulfillment, the community, and the environment. Corporations manufacture desires. America's form of capitalism is deliberately wasteful. Corporations tell us what to do, say, and think, a lot more than do our religions and politics. The modern corporation is dysfunctional, and it is not a person. Its personhood was a legal fiction. It is clear that modern capitalism has degraded personal values. America's financial system is illegitimate. An illegitimate fraud costs investors and creditors over $400 billion yearly. Also, contrary to popular opinion, the stock market plays a minor role in delivering capital to companies. All of its trading involves secondhand shares. The stock market is a gambling arena, not an engine of job creation. Job creation is accomplished by small businesses that aren't listed on the stock market. Conservatives have transferred much of our public common assets to private ownership. The public's land, water, broadcasting airwaves, science, learning, and intellectual property all gone. We as citizens are now paying for what was ours and once was free. Paine viewed land, water, and resources as a way to promote a society of equality, a stream of common income that would be regularly distributed equally to every citizen. Today, the federal government gives billions of dollars in tax refunds to corporations who don't need it. They are making profits, sometimes obscene profits, as a result of market manipulation. These practices only make inequality worse. Our economic system is without values, and it is now clear that more output and more consumption have failed to overcome poverty and inequality. Bigger is not always better. It simply walls off the threat of innovative competition. The U.S. government gives too much financial help to corporations and the rich. Today, federal and state governments have no idea as to what our public works and private gain, and any taxpayer money that becomes private gain is wasted money. The industries that enhanced America's prosperity after World War II were funded by taxpayer money. America's big three automakers eagerly took $2 billion to manufacture a clean car, which they never yet produced. Taxpayers give at least $85 billion in corporate welfare. These are all examples of the devil's economics. And still, this White House touts its Christian makeup. This is ludicrous. Bible prophecy warns of the economic and military downfall of the United States. Some of the modern day descendants of the lost 10 tribes of ancient Israel. America won its last war in World War II. The decline of America will be as a result of self-inflicted economic wounds and will eventually succumb to invasion by the beast, the final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, which will grow out of the European Union. The right-wing theocrats in the Bush White House are facilitators in all of this. They are enablers of our destruction, and the rapture is not an option. The end. Welcome to Censored. This reading is going to be from Censored number 98. We're continuing with our series, This Land Was Yours, and this is part 4 by William J. Eisenman, Ph.D. And I'd like to quote Proverbs 22:16. He that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want. Also, 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 21, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Quote, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. When a long train of abuses and usurpations evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Finally, it has been revealed that George W. Bush and the Republican Party have played the religious right for fools. The Bush administration used religious trappings to get votes from religious dupes. Even Karl Rove knows that these people are nuts. G.W. Bush is not, I repeat, not a biblical Christian. All evidence shows that Bush is a sociopath who enjoys torture. In October of this year, 2006, he signed legislation okaying torture. And what could we have expected from a man who used to put firecrackers in the mouths of frogs and laugh gleefully as they blew up when he was a child? Bush and his administration are sick people who have gotten away with doing sick things to this country. Bush is not the devil, as Hugo Chavez claimed, but from a biblical frame of reference, Bush is being influenced by the devil. He and his administration do devilish things. Bush lacks heart, Katrina, as do those around him. One wonders why his wife Laura can't recognize this. The Bush administration and his Republican Congress are the most corrupt in United States history. They are not only corrupt, they are unchristian. The Christianity practiced by these people is an unbiblical, a pagan form of Christianity that excommunicated and tried to destroy true Christians and has the blood of the saints on its hands. It is a counterfeit Christianity that draws support from duped religious voters. Justice Antonin Scalia, who is always touting no separation of church and state, should learn to keep his mouth shut, as the church he belongs to killed the saints and over 50 million innocent people during the Inquisition. How Christian was that? Some right-wing counterfeit Christians are disillusioned with all the scandals surrounding the corrupt Republicans, but only a handful have got the guts to speak out. Where are the false ministers, the late Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson? Why haven't they spoken up and rebuked their cronies in government? Most likely, they can't get their noses out of G.W. Bush's ass long enough to get a whiff of the truth. This Republican Party and its religious backers and enablers have no morals and no traditional family values. G.W. Bush, the illegitimate president, broke the law and failed to uphold and defend the Constitution. And this corrupt Republican-controlled Congress has failed in its duty regarding oversight. No one with any real power is standing up to the fascistic, despotic Bush gang. Yes, fascistic is the right word to describe the Bush administration. Fascism is an authoritarian, militaristic, corporation-aligned form of government that is ultra-nationalistic. What other than a dictator can we call our play president, who, when he signs laws, attaches signing statements, over 750, to them saying the law doesn't apply to him? The Bush administration has betrayed the public trust and undermined the Constitution, turning sovereignty on its head. The president, under our Constitution, is not the sovereign. The people are. Right-wing religionists have emboldened and enabled our illegitimate president in his corruption. These voters of faith lacked sophistication in choosing their presidential candidate. They were deceived. Revelation 12:9. Their delusions and pagan religious traditions made them suckers for what the Republicans were selling. Today's Republican lives by the lie and public relations, blaming Democrats for all their naivete and incompetence. Republicans today believe everything is political. Therefore, all criticism is mere politics and can be disallowed and ridiculed. The vast majority of counterfeit Christians supporting the Republican Party believe in end time prophecies that do not come from the Bible. Because of this, they overlook devilish tactics in their own and offer no criticism. They are even behind the new end of the world video game Left Behind, Eternal Forces, in which three groups of humanity are at war: the Christians, the forces of Satan, and everyone else. The Christian mission is to defeat all the bad guys and convert as many people as possible to Christianity. The brand of Christianity portrayed in the game is one that believes in the rapture, which is unbiblical. The object of the game, unlike that of the Bible, is to kill or convert. God of the Bible does not use coercion. In the fall of 2006, the rubber stamp Congress and the authoritarian illegitimate president signed away your Sixth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution. You no longer have the right to an attorney, to face your accuser in court, or see the evidence against you and the witnesses. All this to institute a unitary president, an authoritarian or totalitarian president, a dictator. The U.S. government was set up with checks and balances to power in order to avoid such a blatant power grab as what occurred this fall. The sad part in all of this is that many Democrats signed on to this unconstitutional move. These Democrats are, quote, wretched figures, unquote. The religious dupes who voted for George W. Bush are wholly responsible for the demon-influenced bandits that Bush hired to help destroy America. Dick Cheney dodged military service several times, saying he had other priorities. He pushed for the Iraq War, lying all the time, gave multi-billion-dollar no-bid contracts to his incompetent cronies at Halliburton. He also said deficits don't matter. He cursed in Congress, claimed that terrorists would attack if Bush wasn't reelected. Donald Rumsfeld helped arm Saddam Hussein in the 1980s under cut-and-run Ronald Reagan. Rumsfeld blamed Saddam for 9/11. He disregards troop safety, fighting the war on the cheap, no armored vehicles, bulletproof vests, bad food and water as a result of privatization of the war. And he lied about Saddam having nuclear weapons. Condoleezza Rice lied to Congress about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. She wanted to invade Iraq, lied to the 9/11 Commission about government foreknowledge, and shopped for expensive shoes, watched a Broadway play while people drowned in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. Not Corina Laura Bush. Alberto Gonzales squashed clemency requests regarding executions in Texas and helped G.W. Bush avoid jury duty and drunk driving charges. Defended criminals at Enron wrote the infamous torture memos claiming human rights don't apply to anyone Bush says is an enemy combatant. And he tried to undermine the Freedom of Information Act. And he lied to Congress about Bush spying on innocent Americans. And then there's Karl Rove, who used dirty tricks in getting Bush elected governor of Texas and president. He's also suspected of helping fix the Florida election in 2000, as well as the Ohio election in 2004. Rove allegedly leaked the name of an undercover CIA agent to the press. Karl Rove has no moral or ethical compass. And Karen Hughes has a skill for lying that borders on mental illness. This is the Bush crime family. The Bible warns us to know and judge people by their fruits, that is, by their behavior. From the behavior of the Bush gang, we know that, to use biblical terms, they are devil influenced. In George W. Bush's ownership society, the richest 20% of Americans owns 83% of all shares in the stock market. And 53% of that is owned by the richest 1% of Americans. These people are squeezing their wealth from the bottom. Median pay is down 4%. And Americans in the bottom 20% have watched their incomes cut by 20%, while CEO pay increased by 51%, averaging $8.1 million a year. Those Americans in the middle are getting poorer. They are being robbed. The harder you work, the less you get. The top 1% has yours. The rich are getting richer by robbing it from you, not by creating it. We need a New Deal. We need another Franklin D. Roosevelt. We need freedom from want and from fear. Government, meaning all of us, must take the responsibility of protecting all of its citizens' lives and, of course, their livelihoods. It can't be otherwise if the government is all of us and ultimately owns the only real wealth, that is, real estate, by way of eminent domain. The usurper in the White House and his congressional ass-kissers are too zombie-like to feel this way. They are pigs, frenziedly feeding at the public trough. They are interested in none but themselves and all their corporate cronies who are ripping us off. How interesting that gas prices went down before the midterm election. Remember, if gas prices can be manipulated downward, they can also be manipulated upward. Price fixing is alive and well in the corporate suites. George W. Bush believes he owes no one an explanation for what he does or says. He is egotistical. And neither G.W. Bush or his administration is conservative or even neoconservative. The Bush gang are crass right-wing materialists, driven purely by economic and materialistic motives. We're talking psychology here, not politics. G.W. Bush was never elected President of the United States. Bush was placed in office by an unconstitutional action of the United States Supreme Court by judicial fiat, judicial activists of a conservative bend, a blatant subversion of our democracy. The Bush gang uses government programs to silence or hurt its critics. This White House believes it can spin it all, even a Bush legacy. The Bush White House lies at every turn, even to themselves. They display a deadly arrogance and believe themselves to be infallible. This veneer of infallibility flies in the face of facts that show them to be diabolically incompetent. Our soldiers are paying the price for this cloak of pathology hanging over the White House. Bush said, "I believe what I believe is right." But his religious beliefs are without biblical foundation and are now undergoing reality testing. But others are paying the price for these deceptions. G.W. Bush displays a pathological blindness to the truth, facts, and evidence. The Bush gang despises democracy, and the American mainstream press has failed in its duty to act in a free press manner. Today's mainstream press is a pure extension of the rightist psyche. Media is in the pocket of the far-right GOP. This White House, as is common with Republicans, confuses dissent with hate and treason. The Bush gang's civil liberties agenda is purely fascistic. And this White House, PR aside, has disdain for the military. It has put our troops in harm's way for profit and their pet privatization theory. Our troops were sent to die to make Bush and his cronies rich. Bush and Cheney wanted to cut veterans' funding by $910 billion. This White House has damaged our military. Our military was once prepared to fight 2.5 wars at once. Now it can't fight an undeclared war. This demon-led White House has sold the entire U.S. government, your government, to corporate interests. Corporate demons are now in charge of our governmental systems that were put in place to regulate them in order to control our elections. G.W. Bush, on October the 29th, 2002, signed H.R. 3295, which eliminated paper ballots. Now, touch-screen computers, which are easily hackable and programmed to do mischief, will replace a paper trail. How lovely! The Republican right, because they are sexually repressed, see sex as something dirty. Ken Starr, who obsessively went after Bill Clinton with a vengeance, was simply obsessed with sex. There is a dark evil residing in the hearts of Republicans. All Republicans, unless it can be shown otherwise. These people have difficulties controlling their repressed urges. This makes them seek laws to help them with their control problems. They want to prevent you from watching sexually explicit videos in hotel rooms. Behind much of these wishes to control you are the pagan Christians, the counterfeit Christians. These people carry Bibles, study Bibles, but don't follow biblical principles. They don't understand the Bible because they have a willingness to be deceived and a closed mind. The United States is not a Christian nation. The 1796 Treaty of Tripoli states plainly, quote, "The government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." Article 2. Christian Reconstructionists would like to see the Ten Commandments be the ultimate foundation of all institutions everywhere. They say the Bible should govern all areas of life. Leviticus should be the basis of society. Biblical theocratic republics, these would be placed under the leadership of Jesus Christ and God's law. The world and men must be brought into captivity to Christ under the dominion of the kingdom of God. R.J. Rushdoony. This is crap. And it wasn't Rushdoony who said that. That was I who said that. This nonsense that they spew out is crap and certainly unbiblical. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia believes that divine authority is behind government and that government carries the sword as the minister of God to execute wrath upon the evildoer. Is that why his church has throughout history converted by the sword? G. W. Bush said God told him to run for president. Army Lieutenant General William G. Boykin called America a Christian nation and said G. W. Bush was appointed by God. These people are nuts. This unbiblical faith is behind our foreign policy. This White House has an Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and the United States Department of Labor, Commerce, Health, and Human Services has a departmental center for faith-based and community initiatives. The Bush gang believes that social services are to be performed by religious groups, not by government. In this way, these faith-based groups can acquire new converts and thereby save more souls. These ideas that the churches can provide social services for all who need them was debunked during Prohibition and the Great Depression. Only the government can provide the social services needed to serve all the needy. Besides, PMS can't be cured by prayer or Bible reading. G. W. Bush broke the law and arrogantly admitted it when he said he bypassed FISA requirements to spy on innocent Americans and Democrats. Warrantless wiretapping is an impeachable offense. It is also a crime to lie to Congress, as Bush did to involve the U.S. in a war in Iraq. The Bush gang has also committed war crimes. It is a criminal administration, and the Congress, for purely political purposes, has failed to do its job of oversight. How much more of this criminal activity will we, the people, put up with? The religious backers of the illegitimate Bush administration believe Christians must begin to infiltrate the existing institutional order. They believe the Bible supports their lying to obtain power. Joshua 2, verses 1 through 24, James 2, verse 25. Paul Weyrich states it with devilish simplicity. Lying for the cause is no sin. Right-wing religious leader Reverend Moon is even more clear. Lying is necessary, even under oath, when one is doing God's work. These counterfeit Christians need to look at the Ten Commandments instead of placing them in public buildings. Satan is the father of the lie. And when we lie, we are doing the devil's work, not God's. Many in the Bush administration are followers of Leo Strauss, who believe that those who are fit to rule are those who realize that there is no morality and that there is only one natural right, the right of the superior to rule over the inferior. These people hate our secular society, which honors liberalism, dissent, rationalism, and individualism. The religious backers of the Bush administration believe anything that prevents them from imposing their laws on the rest of us is religious persecution. According to these people, they have a mandate from God to conquer America. This is a delusion that is unsupported by the Bible. It amounts to a simple authoritarian power grab under religious garb. These biblical misfits don't regard the existing system as legitimate. These right-wingers are fanatical. They kiss the ass of big business and hate godless liberals. We make big mistakes in electing our representatives when we don't draft the reluctant man and discourage mere demagogues, political hacks, and routiners, said George Bernard Shaw. If we are in any way serious about trying to improve our nation, we must first improve its institutions and the people we allow to run them. Making them less workable, as the Republicans have done, is the road to ruin. The Republicans in power today are evildoers who bribe journalists and moralists to invent excuses for their evil doing. Because of the virtual monopoly over the nation's political conversation, right-wingers have demonized liberals. They have been portrayed as spendthrifts, immoral, godless, unpatriotic, politically correct, communists, elitists, and now terrorists. History shows that liberal policies made America the freest, wealthiest, most successful, and most powerful nation in human history. The myth of the liberal media was an excuse to mask conservative failure and incompetence. Liberal bias was a lie. Sometimes right-wingers confuse that which is right with being liberal. The following never served in the military: Dick Cheney, who had better things to do, Rush Limbaugh, Trent Lott, Newt Gingrich, Denny Hastert, Tom DeLay, Dick Armey, Karl Rove, Phil Gramm, and John Ashcroft. These are all chicken hawks. The bulk of Bush's deficits and future deficit forecasts are the result of his tax cuts. The Republicans take from the poor and middle class and give to the rich, and they get reelected. Republicans have always been bad for our nation. Democratic presidents were responsible for more growth, higher wages, lower deficits, lower government spending, and lower inflation. Under Bill Clinton, the minimum wage was increased, as were taxes on the rich, and 22 million jobs were created. Bush has yet to create one net job in 6 years. Yet the myth that Republicans are good for the economy persists. Right-wing Christians supported these adulterers in the 1994 Congress. Helen Chenoweth, Henry Hyde, Dan Burton, Bob Barr, Robert Livingston, and Newt Gingrich. These Christians are hypocrites and were only interested in sucking up to power. George W. Bush's compassionate conservatism was a political ploy, a deception. What he really believes is that only those who accept their moral failure and cease questioning authority are entitled to compassion. Only humbled sinners merit the assistance of their social and theological betters. Now, who are the elitists? These totalitarians place church and corporations over we, the people, and the modern democratic state. In their surreal world, the rich are God's elect. There is no compassion in the Bush White House. Ronald Reagan cut and ran in Lebanon and traded arms for hostages with Iran. He was soft on terrorism. Reagan and G.H.W. Bush made deals with terrorists. They aided and abetted the enemy. Reagan enabled terrorism to prosper. CIA money financed the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Reagan was a traitor. In 2000, the U.S. poverty rate was 31.6%. In 2002, it grew to 34.6%. The Bush administration did nothing about lowering the poverty rate. Bush, without compassion, watched the victims of Hurricane Katrina die. Those in charge of our government don't want government to work. Thomas Jefferson said, "Now, a government is like everything else. To preserve it, we must love it." Accepting the biblical frame of reference, the Bush administration has damaged America in ways that will enable the beast, the last resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, to conquer, kill, and take into captivity Americans. This White House treats politics as a sales challenge. And with the right kind of spin, the Bush gang has sold our country a devilish agenda. Liberalism is a doctrine that, in the name of tolerance, shuns absolutes. But liberalism does not shun every absolute. During the Great Depression, as governor of New York, Franklin D. Roosevelt created the first effective relief administration. FDR believed in government and thought it was the chief tool of social change to transform ideals into action, transform the ideal into the real, FDR said. The test of our progress as a nation is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have so little. We can see here why Republicans hate FDR. Franklin D. Roosevelt understood the state to be the duly constituted representative of an organized society of human beings, created by them for their mutual protection and well-being. The creature of the people. The state is the servant, and the people are its master. One of the chief duties of the state was caring for its citizens, who might be unable to acquire the necessities for mere existence. In 1932, FDR said, "Every man has a right to life, and this means that he has also a right to make a comfortable living." In contrast to the Bush administration, FDR knew that there's no such thing as security for any nation or any individual in a world ruled by the principles of gangsterism. We definitely need an FDR today. The end.
Hi, this is William Morrow. Are you one of those people who join a health club, and after they have your big, overpriced annual membership, you notice that you're on your own with little or no results even after all the promises? Then the website Personal Trainer is for you. Thank you very much, William H. Morrow III.
So you lost another argument with a conservative, right-wing Republican. He talked over you. He screamed and yelled. He brought out the Bible. He thumped it. He quoted scripture to you. You were lost because you came at him with facts. Nothing but facts. And you expected that would make you look good. That would make you win the argument, but it didn't. You know why you lost the argument? You know why you're going to lose your next argument? Because you don't read Censored. Censored, a 30-year-old newsletter that shows you how to defeat a conservative. Read Censored, and you'll have all the ammunition you need. Every time you get into an argument with a right-wing conservative, so-called Christian. Censored, that's all you need. Read it and defeat a conservative.
Greetings, listeners. Let me speak to you for a moment about the foundation of our entire organization, Newsletters Censored. It was founded by our mentor, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman, in 1977. It discusses the 5 taboos of American life: politics, religion, health, human sexuality, and child rearing. You won't find anything like this in the mainstream media and the press. It reveals the kind of truth that most people are afraid to hear. Can you handle it? We are living in the end times, so in order to defeat a conservative and save America, you need Newsletters Censored. Go to www.newslettercensored.com, click on the printable order form page, and with your gift to support this work, get your free annual subscription. This is James P. Madonna of Megalife 21, the hardest hitting internet talk radio station on the planet.